Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Fast 10. Winning used to be about winning. We would race for respect. But today, I race to end the bloodbath. Hello, I'm J-Law, but you can call me Justin, and if you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things Geekcentric. Joining me for today's spoiler-free review, he's my ride or die, and he's still a buster, Mr. Nate Shelton. How are you?
How am I, Justin? The words ain't even been invented yet. I've been living my life a quarter of a mile at a time.
Yes.
This past 10 days, I've just been steeped in Fast and Furious. And I got to tell you, I don't know if I'm any faster, but I'm definitely more furious.
Yeah, well, like you said, like recently over the last 10 days, you know, you've been watching this franchise, you know, from start to finish. I'm calling it the quarter mile marathon, if you will.
I love it.
And
the only marathon I'll actually do. There we go.
Probably, yeah. I wanted to know, before we get into talking about Fast 10, what's been your experience with this franchise for the first time? How have you been enjoying it, and any takeaways?
Yeah, man. I mean, I've been on the road to the beginning of the end of the road for the past X days, and you know what? It's funny. I think, and we'll obviously talk about it, but I really do feel like this series has a lot of ups and downs. I think for a series that is, you know, it's how old is it at this point? It's like
it's 22 years old. It's
22 years old. You know, I think I'm 50-50 on the overall enjoyment. The overall success rate is 50-50, which really to me kind of points out that they should have probably ended this like, you know, 5 movies ago or 4 movies ago. But I think I've been enjoying a lot of the campiness, the cheesiness, and at a certain point of watching these movies back to back to back, because you watch them years apart from each other. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think things, you know, you had a bit more of you could have a bit more of an appreciation or a nostalgia. See what I did there?
Good one.
For the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for myself, a lot of it started to blur together when you're watching these things back to back to back. And so I don't know if that actually may have hindered my overall experience, but I'm kind of at a place where I'm just like, you know what? It peaked at 5. And I still think that's the case.
Sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, the Fast and Furious saga is 22 years old, and I've been following it since it started. I've seen every movie in theater except 9 because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But you know, again, this is a franchise that I hold close and dear to my heart. You know, fast cars, heart-pounding action. You know, strong emphasis on family. Come on, like this. This series is a cultural phenomenon, man.
A lot of butts. There's a lot of butts in the franchise.
Oh, dude, it's so many butts.
We usually within like the first 4 minutes of watching one of these movies, I'm just like,
you get to like one of those hype like race parties, and there's just a lot of TNA everywhere.
Everywhere.
But you know, like this movie had humble beginnings. You know, being sort of a Point Break style teen movie with fast cars based in LA, and Fast and the Furious kicked off this franchise about street racers who have evolved then into globetrotting thieves, you know, performing impossible stunts, and each installment pushes the boundaries of what's possible on the screen and what's possible with cars at the end of the day. And you know, over the years, the characters have evolved. Some have passed away, some have returned, but you know, the strength
more than once.
I think, yeah, of course. But I think the strength of 6 of the films from 1 to 6 was the relationship with Vin Diesel's Dominic Toretto and the late Paul Walker, Brian O'Connor. Their friendship on screen and off screen served as an emotional anchor for the saga. So for myself, with Furious 7, this was a hero send-off as the Fast family said farewell to the character of Brian and Paul Walker. And in my opinion, that's where the franchise should have ended. However, that didn't stop them from coming out with Fate of the Furious and F9, both of which just were absolutely absurd. Craziness dialed way the hell up. And there was definitely a shift of focus to like more of this like over the top action, which is kind of
superheroes.
Yeah, exactly. They become synonymous with the Fast and Furious saga. But, it continues to deliver thrilling entertainment that keeps fans coming back for more with, next level action adventure and a killer soundtrack. It's a franchise that honestly celebrates the joy of speed, the power of loyalty, and the enduring strength of family. And, I think that these are the things that you can take away from the franchise outside of the silliness, because it is silly at times. And that's kind of part of the fun of it. That is part of the inherent franchise, if you will. But with that said, our thoughts on the franchise, let's get into talking about Fast 10. A huge thanks to our friends at Universal Studios Canada for inviting us out to this early screening, which was a fan event, which was totally great to actually see it with a really large
much
crowd.
Fun. To get there was cars parked out front. I will say really quickly, we drove together to go to this screening at a theater that we don't normally go to, and on the way we passed by a truck on fire and a black Dodge Charger. So in my mind, I was like, "Oh, the family's already come through here." Like,
exactly.
We're in a Fast and Furious movie.
All signs were pointing to 10. Let me tell you.
Yes.
For our listeners, getting you up to speed, let me just read you this lovely synopsis, which will also outline who's starring in this movie. So, the end of the road begins. Fast 10, the 10th film in the Fast and Furious saga, launches the final chapters of one of cinema's most storied and popular global franchises. Now in its third decade and still going strong with the same core cast and characters as when it began. Over many missions and against impossible odds, Dom Toretto, played by the one and only Vin Diesel, and his family have outsmarted, outnerved, and outdriven every foe in their path. Now they confront the most lethal opponent they've ever faced, a terrifying threat emerging from the shadows of the past, who's fueled by bloody revenge, and who is determined to shatter this family and destroy everything and everyone that Dom loves forever. In 2011's Fast 5, Dom and his crew took out the nefarious Brazilian drug kingpin Hernan Reyes and decapitated his empire on a bridge in Rio de Janeiro. What they didn't know was that Reyes' son, Dante, played by Jason Momoa, witnessed it all and has spent the last 12 years masterminding a plan to make Dom pay the ultimate price. Dante's plot will scatter Dom's family from Los Angeles to the catacombs of Rome, from Brazil to London, and from Portugal to Antarctica. New allies will be forged and old enemies will resurface. But everything changes when Dom discovers that his own 8-year-old son, Little B, is the ultimate target for Dante's vengeance. Directed by Louis Leterrier and written by Justin Lin and Dan Mazzo, Fast 10 stars the returning cast members of Michelle Rodriguez, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Luda Bridges, Natalie Emmanuel, Jordana Brewster, Sung Kang, Jason Statham, John Cena, and Scott Eastwood, with Oscar winner Helen Mirren and Oscar winner Charlize Theron. The film also features an extraordinary new cast, including Oscar winner Brie Larson as Tess, a rogue representative from the agency, Alan Ritchson, who plays Ames, the new head of the agency, who doesn't hold the same fondness for Dom's crew as his predecessor, Mr. Nobody, and Daniela Melchior as a Brazilian streetcar racer with a powerful tie to Dom's past, and legendary Oscar winner Rita Moreno as Dom and Mia's abuela Toretto. So this, yet again, has garnered a massive cast returning, and then we have some new members. Let's get into talking about this. We usually like to do these things with what worked and what didn't work. Usually when I host, I like to kind of set it up with sort of a pillar structure of three things that we're going to talk about. So today we're going to talk about the story, the characters, and the action. And within all three of those, we will give you what worked and what didn't work. Just a reminder, this is spoiler-free, so you don't have to worry. We're not going to be spoiling any of the end credit stingers like some people have been online. If you want to find that out, you can do so very easily on Twitter. So let's kick it off by talking about this story. And I'm just going to kick things off by saying, as I outlined in that synopsis, this does connect back to Fast Five, and I think that really does work for this movie. It works a lot in that it connects back to
the best one
we talked about. Yes, the movie that peaked the franchise, the best of the franchise, and it reconnects with some of those characters and that storyline, and it really does make it more engaging because of how much appreciation I think all fans have for that movie. So I enjoyed that. I liked that they pulled in a character like Jason Momoa's Dante, and they tied it back to Reyes, the villain that they had in the fifth one. I think it works with at least, again, getting us hooked in. It is a bit of fan service, but I think at this point, as we get to the end of the road, it's welcomed.
Well, and I think it's, in my opinion, I think it's the best implementation of a villain. I mean, we'll get to Momoa's character a little bit later,
yes.
But as far as like bringing in a new villain, this was a really great way to do it. And I felt it was, yes, it was fan service, but it made a heck of a lot of sense, for this franchise. And I think it made sense for this movie. And I think it worked. I think there's a lot of times where previous villains, I even think back to like Hobbs and Shaw, where it's just like, he's the bad guy and he's just the bad guy to be the bad guy. Whereas here, it felt like it was purposeful. It felt like it served the story, and it felt like it really fit the theme of family.
It did. It definitely does. And I think the other thing too is that they do a great job at kind of rounding out how and where this character was, when the events of Five were happening. And I think that has handled really, really well and set up really well so that we have an understanding of who this character is and why he's been, as I was mentioning in the synopsis, planning this grand scheme for the last 12 years.
Well, and I think that's the thing is like it almost adds to the gravitas of the threat that he wasn't mentioned before. And again, I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but it does. It kind of adds to it to the point where you're just kind of like, oh, wow. So, he's been hiding in the shadows. He's been studying every single moment of these people and their lives. And that's just what really makes him a scarier villain. Aside from the villain, I think one of the big things to note with this movie, if you think you know what's going to happen in this movie, you're probably right. Like, you're probably right. And that's okay. The movie has fun with that fact. And I think, it doesn't really matter. Why do they have to travel the world? Here's a reason. Why do they need to get back in the cars? Here's a reason. And it's I don't really think that that matters as much.
No, it doesn't.
So just
not anymore.
Keep that in mind, that like you're not going into this movie at this point, if you're a fan of this franchise, thinking like there's going to be a deeper reason behind this. Again, thankfully that is the case, in my opinion and your opinion, for the villain. But as far as the actual narrative is concerned, it is a lot of the reasoning is paint by numbers.
For sure. And I think, like you said, it's the 10th movie. It's in the franchise. We've grown accustomed to how things work. There needs to be very little explanation that needs to surround as to why these things are happening. It's happening. The pacing of the film is relentless. There's no shortage of, little surprises here and there, and some twists, if you will, that at times had my eyes rolling, like that are a little silly,
and predictable and unoriginal. Yeah,
exactly. Very predictable, very unoriginal, as I was just about to say. The plot takes us, as you mentioned, on a globetrotting adventure that, seemingly transitions between different stunning locations. But in my opinion, this is where the story kind of doesn't work, is that the team is stretched a bit too thin across, 4 or 5, I guess, different plots that are going on. But,
right.
which makes the pacing a bit more of like a stop and go, right? But
Yeah.
when things are going, like they are like full on cranked, like just they are high speed, they are crazy. Which again, I'm also wondering if it's kind of a product of what this movie is designed to be, because as we know, this is the beginning of the end, as they said, the beginning of the end of the road. But there are, two movies, or apparently three movies, if you consider what Vin Diesel said. But let's just go on the basis that at this moment that there's two movies. This has that Infinity War, Empire Strikes Back, Back to the Future 2, or even Matrix Reloaded. Like any of those movies, they were designed with a follow-up in mind. So
Right.
this movie is designed with that, which is why maybe some of those, plots and some of those storylines might have kind of, taken a sideline, because we might follow up with them with whatever part 2 of this movie comes out. But that said, it does kind of feel very heavy-handed with certain characters taking the focus, like Dom, rather than others. Because I really enjoyed, I guess, the more secondary characters like Tej and Ro and Ramsey. Like they're really, really great altogether. I would have liked to have seen a little more focus on that rather than just the heavy-handed Dom story.
I think there's a lot of moments though where, like a lot of moments where I did find it like it spins its wheels a little bit. Like we lose pace in moments where it feels like a forced injection of humor. It feels like a forced injection of emotional scene, and some of them work, but a lot of them do fall flat on their face. And even the humor at this point, I was definitely chuckling along throughout the movie, but there are some moments where I was just kind of like, they were absolutely pointless. And if they had yielded a bigger laugh, they would have been worth it. There's a scene with an actor who cameos in this movie. I'm not going to spoil it. Let's just tell you, though, that drugs are involved. And, I mean, I chuckled a bit, but it didn't... I don't know what it added to the story other than just to have that happen. And it really felt like with a few of these moments, back to back to back, it felt like it was just beefing up the runtime unnecessarily. And the movie, is actually one of the shorter ones of the franchise in comparison to some of the previous ones we've gotten. But those were the moments where I was just kind of like, if I was at home right now, I might be on my phone. And that's not great, in my opinion.
Sure. Have scenes and moments that matter versus things that are going to take you out or slow down the ride, if you will, right? Because I definitely agree. I think that there are moments from a pacing standpoint where things, like you said, are injected for the purpose of just either emotional hits or humorous hits, or whatever it might be. But, that said, again, I know we just spent some time talking about the story, but I don't know if many people are really going to these movies now for the story as much as they are going to go for the characters and the action. Right. So let's start talking about the characters, and let's talk about Jason Momoa as Dante Reyes. Easily the most eccentric villain we've gotten from the franchise. He has the right balance of manic, psychotic tones that are very Joker-esque. Everyone's saying it. It's very Joker-esque. It's almost more Heath Ledger-esque than it is Joker, I guess. Like it's his portrayal. Very, very flamboyant, very over the top. But man, was it welcomed. It was refreshing. It was probably one of the highlights, if not the highlight of the movie. I think it really fit. And I don't know, like, you got to think when they're watching back in some of these moments with Momoa as he kind of does his song and dance, if you will, if they chuckled and it took them out, because in our audience, a lot of people were laughing. I was laughing a lot. And like, I guess that's, again, part of the experience of the Fast saga is to chuckle at some of the absurdity of this. And, again, I think just Momoa embraced his character. He had fun with it, showing that as an audience member, everyone should just have fun with these movies. So he's having fun. Have fun with it.
Yeah, he looked like he had a blast making this character. And I think it's the exact amount of bombasticness. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to make it one. I think he's the right amount of crazy that the franchise needed since jumping into the superhero genre. I feel like a character like his, it would be too much in earlier Fast and Furious movies, in 1, or even potentially even something like 4. I think he really, since they made the jump to space, and they can't get hurt, and it's impossible to even get a scratch on them, as Ro thinks. I think Dante was a really I think might be the best villain that we've gotten since.
Oh, he is.
Again,
He is
that jump.
100% the best villain in the Fast franchise, and
Yeah.
like you said, they've crossed the line. I think it's probably after 7 where they crossed into the superhero territory, right? Like they needed to evolve, and they needed to, have this no holds bar action adventure style that they were going for, and yeah, I think that, as you said, his character of Dante Reyes is well matched in this world of superhero car drivers, if you will.
Well, and as ridiculous and silly as he can be, he does like there's moments where he's very cutting, and he cuts to that seriousness that, again, even in that moment is a little bit laughable because of just how overtly serious he is. But you then cut to a scene where he's painting his toenails, and he's got pigtails, and I'm just people are giggling every time he's on screen. I think he knew at this point in the franchise that he can't go too far, and he exploits that excellently with this character. Like they know that, like, at this point they can't go too far with it, and I think he had a lot of fun. I think Jacob, played by John Cena in this movie, is a very close second favorite for me. He's given a very different task in this one, and this is a post-Peacemaker John Cena, and this version of this character works so much better than the brooding, angry version of Jacob that we had.
Yeah, that's 100% agree with you. I think that they realize that, because I don't think he was a great villain in F9. As a villain, he was actually weak, and I would have rathered him come in as a hero, as a military guy that was on their side right from the get-go. I think that would have been a better play, because here he's charming, he's funny, he's very sweet. I wish we had more of him. His role and his task is actually more sidelined than you would think, and I think that's actually the one detriment in terms of the character aspect, that I wish we could have seen more of him. Do you know what I mean? I wish he could have been more involved in things, and that's because he was so delightful, and he's just underutilized, I feel like, and I would have loved to have seen more of him.
Yeah, I think as far as, what situation can we put him in to get that version of the character, I think it actually worked really well.
It works. I agree, though.
He was too good that you wanted more. He was like,
exactly.
It's like you got a small piece of cake, you wanted a big piece of cake. I get it.
Oh yeah, exactly. I wanted more. I wanted seconds. So it's definitely that. We can't not talk about Vin, Mr. Diesel, Mr. Dom Toretto. He brings his signature intensity and gravitas that's just, at this point, is so natural to him. It just reminds us, why Toretto is such an iconic character. He's just so natural and fluid with it. But I'm going to give my hat off to the chemistry between the ensemble cast. Like this is with Ludacris, Tyrese, Michelle, just all of them coming together, even Sung Kang as Han. Like, they found a balance of being comfortable with these characters and knowing that they're essentially extensions of themselves. So the humor and stuff just, like you said, like those moments felt forced in the movie, but their interactions with each other did not feel forced, in my opinion. I think that they were very natural. It was just, again, their comfort with playing these characters for so many years. But again, as I was mentioning before, it just felt like their story was very subplot. It wasn't necessarily as important. And it just feels like a detriment to those. It seems like a misuse of those characters. But again, this is a very Dom heavy movie. So
yeah, I mean, he's a heavy guy. But also I think, there's we get Daniela Melchior in this movie. I won't spoil who she is or how she's necessarily related to it. But I think there were three new faces that come to mind for me that felt very much like very much like I think Ramsey did in the first introduction of her character. But even she
Just
kind
serving
of
a purpose.
yeah, like it kind of felt like they were just sort of there to move the story along. And for me, that was Daniela's character. I think also Brie Larson as Tess. I will say of the three, between her, Daniela's character, and Alan Ritchson's character, Agent Ames, I will say I think Tess was the highest on my list as far as those side
she was the
characters.
best.
But she just, all three of them felt like they were there to move things along, and especially with Agent Ames, Alan Ritchson is just like, didn't feel like he belonged in this story. I didn't really enjoy his character at all that much, and felt very very clunkily handled, and had a very unoriginal payoff at the same time, to the point where I was just kind of like, I get that maybe that's like kind of like a callback, but I don't know, man. I didn't really enjoy all three of them.
Yeah, I think he was very half-assedly written.
Yeah.
Like, to your point, he had to serve a purpose. I think he served that purpose. Agent Ames, it's just such a basic name.
Yeah.
So, like, the actor himself, Alan Ritchson, is fine.
It reminded me like okay, not as bad as like Gina Carano's character. Like at least this guy had like lines in the movie, but
for sure.
But still,
Gina was
time
brought on for muscle, right? And like this
right,
guy,
and that's what this guy was brought on for as well.
But was he? Like, you don't really get to see that much really go on with him, right? Like, he's definitely,
there's like one fight scene.
He's replacing Mr. Nobody, right? And like, honestly, like, I think the most charismatic of the three, the most dynamic, the most interesting was Brie Larson's Tess. She is refreshing, and she has fun with it as well. I think, again, she was there for a purpose, very much like Kurt Russell was as Mr. Nobody. Just there, adding a little bit of that star power and that gravitas, if you will, for who Brie Larson is. She had fun with it.
I will say, though, I don't know if I fully agree with you on the rest of the cast. Like, I think by this point, the bar for admission is how they acted in this movie. Do you know what I mean? So it to me, because of Momoa being so, like, shining so bright in this movie, it almost, casts a bit of a shadow on the rest of the cast, where I'm sort of watching them. And even with, like, Rose's character this time around, a lot of his comedy didn't really work for me as it has in the past. And I feel like a lot of the characters were almost just playing it too earnest, too serious, which I know that they do that a lot in this franchise. But when you have Momoa playing into the silliness as much as he is, and even Cena at times playing into the silliness, to go back to those moments where they are trying to just be so overtly serious, and I don't know if it works every single time. I'm not saying they can't be serious within this world and it should just be all comedy or all jokes or all silliness. But it just, at times, there were just moments where I'm like, with a lot of these characters, it was just what I expected. And I you would hope for more in the 10th movie.
I don't know. I feel like, again, it's a comfort. Well, no, but I think that there's a comfortability with these characters. Like, they don't need to reinvent themselves every movie and have to do it. They're there to be Tej.
No, but they need to add maybe something new after 10 movies.
Maybe, but I honestly don't think that that's up to them. Do you know what I mean? That's up to writing to do that, right? Like, it's not up to them to be like, oh, we're gonna reinvent the character. That comes up to writing. And as we were saying, it's clear that the writing of their story was very secondary. And like you said, these are characters that we've known for some time in this franchise. But here comes Jason Momoa, who's being given a brand new character who can do whatever the fuck he wants with it, right? Like, he can say, I want to play the character like this, and they're going to be like, you know what? That's refreshing. That's different. You know what I mean? From everything else that we have, I think that'll really work. And you might be right. It might be shadowed, but that goes back to what I was saying before, where everything is spread with the story. Like, all the plots are spread pretty thin, across 4 or 5 different stories. And really, at the end of the day, this is a Dom heavy story. So we, those moments that we get with those side characters feel a little more, as you said, filled in, if you will. Like they're there
Right.
to remind us that these characters are doing something else that's in relation to the larger story. Again, it's very Infinity War, right? In
Yeah.
the same idea of how
But
Infinity
in
War
Infinity War, every time it moved from one set of characters to another, I didn't mind. Whereas in this one,
right.
I kind of wanted to stay with
Exactly.
some of the cast more than others,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Then and that's completely fine. But there's also, a whole other element of the MCU that's at play there, and the dynamic of which characters are with. You got Thor with the Guardians and stuff like that. Here you have the same collection of characters together, right? It's
Right.
Ramsey, Rowe, and Tej doing their own thing, right? And
Right.
then it's, fucking Dom and facing bad guy, and Letty doing her thing. Like it's just, again, it was all really spread out. And I think I think that might be the detriment overall to what you're talking about, to why these characters felt so just like lean. I don't know, like it just seemed natural to me. Like their chemistry seems natural. Like it seems like it's comfortable. Maybe what I see as comfort, you see as laziness in a sense, right? Is
I wouldn't even
like,
say laziness, just boring. You know what I mean? Like again,
boring, lazy. Yeah,
I think they're best when they're all together, when they're a family.
for sure. But like,
Just give me more picnics. That's what I want. That's what I want. I want to go to more
yeah, of
picnics.
course. For sure, barbecues is what you want, not picnics.
Yeah,
Jeez,
a lot of
man.
action
Right.
at barbecues.
What are you, a 10-day fan? Jeez. All right, let's get into our next topic here: visual effects and action. Look, I'm just gonna say it: the visual effects and the cinematography are nothing short of awesome. There's some cool stuff that they try to implicate towards the end. There's some CGI that gets a little questionable, but it's actually, I think it might be a bit more of a callback to the first one, with setting off Nos, where it's just like this crazy zoomed in macro camera whipping effect. It's intense. CGI in that was a little dodgy. It kind of took me out at it, but explosions top notch. Cars doing some crazy ass shit. Like you can see it in the trailers, man. Fucking Dom takes down 2 helicopters, and I was just like, wow, that is intense. And that moment like hits you in the theater when that explosion happens. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, I will, like, I think for the action, it's one of the things I liked most and least about this movie, actually. Like, I think it keeps up with what you would expect from these movies. I think there's a lot of it. There's a lot of really big explosions. We actually do get a street race in this one, which is nice to see. And it's done differently than you'd expect, which was refreshing. I do find, though, I think the narrative I can give a pass for cheesy callbacks. And even if they do them over and over again, and even from like the previous movie, like they'll just do a callback, and it's like, that was just one movie ago. Like, calm down. But I think with the action callbacks, to me, that's where it started getting in its own way a little bit. Where I did find that, yes, I get it. It's an homage to that action moment that you saw, or that action moment that you saw. But to me, I actually felt like they didn't do too much new outside of something that happens at the end that I do think is really, really stellar and really, really cool. But other than that, I did feel like it was, I don't know, it just it there was not anything within the action, to me, for the most part, again, except for at the end, that stood out as something that I was just like, I can't stop thinking about. But overall, when you're just sort of looking at it as a big movie, and you're there to have fun, and you're there to see people jumping out of cars and landing on cars and flying through the air and all that stuff. Sure, it definitely does a serviceable job with the action, but I didn't find that it added anything new.
What you were expecting in regards to the action.
I was expecting, like, dude, we went to space the last time. I want to see things like in space, falling out of space, traveling through time. Sure, why not? You know what I mean? Why not? Like, I want to see, even in F9, the magnet stuff was the stupidest thing in the world, but at least it was different. You know what I mean? Whereas this didn't. I didn't get enough different in this one. But that's just my
Yeah, I
opinion.
think I maybe so okay, so it wasn't different enough for you, and for me, I think the amount of callbacks and the sort of homage that was paid to some of the moments in the past, it worked for me. I think it worked really, really well. I think that they didn't spare any expense with the explosions and showing how the car can be both, a vehicle and a weapon. And I think that that's always been the strength of the franchise is finding new ways to do that, and also a tool. Again, it's the Fast and Furious. I don't know what many people are expecting in terms of it, but again, the explosions were the amount of shit that blew up. That was pretty nuts in this one. They
Sure.
definitely elevated the stakes on that.
Totally.
All right, well, we've run that quarter mile, so I think it's time we've give our final thoughts and our rating, which will be out of 1 to 5 tanks of NOS.
Oh,
All right, Nate. How many tanks?
tanks
you
of
give
NOS. I don't know if I'll need all 5, but like we said, this franchise peaked at 5. That's still the case. But I will say there were a lot of smiles to be had with this one. I think there's, there were definitely moments that myself and the crowd were laughing at moments that I know the writers didn't intend for us to be laughing at. And there was one specific person in our audience that was just laughing at anything that happened on the screen. A character turns their head one way and they started laughing. It was a bit distracting. But I think, for the moments that didn't fall flat, I enjoyed some of the elements of humor. I think the reason you go see this movie is Jason Momoa. I think he did such an excellent job as Dante. And I think, again, the character interaction is to be expected at this point of just how, like you were saying, how natural they are on screen. But there needs to be more of that, I think, holistically. I think we need the whole family together, or find ways to actually make the subplots a little more like they matter. I think
exactly.
I think would be
They need
the
to
goal.
have. That is exactly it. Because again, going back to the analogy of the Infinity War, where your heroes are divided only to come together in the final story to be the heroes together. I think that this is very fitting for them to be divided. But as I was saying, narratively, the subplots with these characters is so lackluster that it just feels like this movie is a Dom-heavy movie, right?
Yeah.
Like their stories don't really matter, and that we were just constantly thrown into their stories just to remind us that they were still doing shit. So
Right.
I totally agree. They need to matter. That's not on the acting as much as it
No,
is
not at
on
all.
the writing. Yeah,
No,
it's on
I
the
think the
writing, right?
performances.
So
I think the performances were exactly what I would expect from this movie from them. I just think from a character standpoint, I wanted them to have a little bit more. They deserve better. Is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, they should have been written better and less secondary and
Yeah.
still as part of the family, if you will.
Yes. I am worried that now this is going to be followed up with 2 more sequels, where like this really, if they could just nail the ending with 1 more, I think that would make this entry even better. But the fact that they're going to try to stretch this out into 3 movies, is really worrying.
And on that note, I will wait until Universal decides to say that. Right now, Vin Diesel saying that
Says what he wants
it's kind
to
of
say.
like The Rock hyping up things before they even get announced, and then maybe they will or won't, because they don't need 3. They can end with a follow-up to this movie. I feel like if they tried to do a third, it would be a stretch, because this is a perfect part 1 to a part 2.
I think it's a very good part 1 to a part 2.
Yeah.
I'm in 2 minds with the final rating. So on the Fast and Furious scale, I think this is one of the better of the franchise. I would put it all the way at a 4 out of 5 on the Fast and Furious scale. If this movie is within its own company of its own franchise, that's what I would rate it. However, in the world of movies in general, this is a 3.5 out of 5 tanks of NOS. It's not a great movie, but turn off your brain, watch it with a big crowd, bucket full of popcorn, and I think you'll still have a pretty damn good time at the movies. Like I again, it's Fast and Furious. It's a Fast and Furious movie, and there are for the refreshing parts that work, they really really work, and for the rest of it, just don't think about it. If
For
that
sure.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah, no, I get you. I think the difference really is you're either. I think it's really helpful that you watched all 9 movies leading up to this, because it does show a bit of a differentiation. You can be committed to the franchise for 22 years and have a difference of opinion and know that when you're going into this movie, it's just for fun. You know what
Right.
you're getting yourself into.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think for the sake of watching 10 movies ahead of this, to kind of feel like, well, where's this story going to go? What is it going to do that's going to add different? Like you said, it's all melding together for you.
Yeah.
Right. Like a lot of it is, I thought I saw this already. And did this happen here or did this happen here? And,
Right. Was that in 7? Was that in 8? Was that in
Exactly.
4?
Exactly. Because it all becomes melded when you watch them like that, especially for the first time. I can only imagine. Right. But
To
again,
me,
I
it started feeling like a TV show. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
It's
these
like a
are
soap opera.
episodes.
It's like an elongated soap opera. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. So, but for me, again, a fan of this series for 22 years, I think Fast 10 takes the adrenaline pumping action to a whole new level, and it really does begin the road to the end for this franchise. From start to finish, I think this film delivers excitement in and around its villain, played by Jason Momoa. And I also think that bringing Luis in to direct, he added that finesse and precision to the action sequences, and to navigate what is, as I mentioned, a very convoluted story with all of these subplots happening, but he did keep it centered on Dom, and I imagine that was intentional. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was all intentional, because he is family. He's the head of this family, right?
The main character, I guess.
So I think Fast 10 is a testament to the series' ability to show us something new with its villain, and how refreshing that can be, while also staying true to some of the core themes of family and loyalty, and that is from both sides, from the good and the bad, and this thirst for speed and bullets. There's no shortage of jaw-dropping stunts and mind-blowing action sequences, death-defying car chases through bustling cities like Rome, and gravity-defying jumps that would have massive explosion. The film is raising the bar in terms of spectacle. The returning ensemble cast was great, in my opinion. They prove that they are in fact a family, as they naturally find the balance between humor and heart. And as we mentioned, Jason Momoa is a standout. He is the most welcomed addition to this franchise. He strikes the balance between unhinged, psychotic, and he's the perfect villain for these final chapters. And he's a scene stealer. This is part 1 of what could be 2, and as we were mentioning, or 3 if you're listening to Vin Diesel, and that will close out the story of these characters. And like I was saying, this film is similar to an Infinity War and Empire Strikes Back. The narrative is intentionally designed to conclude in a following story. That said, this film is far from perfect, as you said, Nate, like most Fast movies, but it's still a thrill ride that put a smile on my face. It's a love letter to the loyal fans who have been following the franchise for years, giving us the greatest hits with its stunning action sequences, ensemble cast characters, and the Joker-esque villain. And it has a healthy dose of heart. Fast 10 cements its place as a must-watch. I do believe this is a must-watch in the installment of the Fast and Furious saga. My score is very much like yourself, Nate. I'm going to be giving it a 4 out of 5 tanks of NOS. I think in the scale of the Fast and Furious saga, it's definitely a 4 out of 5. And then in the actual film, if we're critics, I don't really think of myself as a critic. I think of myself as more of a fan. So I'm going to be giving it 4 out of 5. But you're probably right. People are going to probably, like yourself, thinking more critically about it, are going to give it a 3.5 or lower. So I'm sticking with my 4 out of 5 tanks.
Wow, he's just You never leave your family behind. I get it. I get it.
bro.
You're wearing the wife beater right now. We both are, actually, for our listeners listening.
Yeah.
We're both wearing the cutoff shirts, I guess is what they're actually called. And then
Yeah, they gave it to us. Yeah.
they gave us
Got the guns
these
showing.
shirts. Oh, it was great.
We're confident right now because
I don't know if
we're
these are
not,
guns, but something's showing. Before we wrap up, I wanted to quickly just mention. So, we talked about how this series is becoming very superhero-esque. You had mentioned prior to us going into the movie, you're like, it's going to feel even more Marvel. They're really gonna hammer home the Marvel-esque nature of it, and to a certain degree, a little bit of DC in there as well. But I think as they start to go more and more Marvel, Justin, I've already thought of the next Fast and Furious Presents. Okay, are you ready for this? So Marvel, by the time they get the second movie of the trilogy, the final trilogy out, and maybe the third one out, I think Marvel will have capitalized on Young Avengers. I think we're going to have the Young Avengers introduced into the MCU. I think that movie is going to do so well for Disney that Universal's going to see that, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to make a Fast and Furious legacy movie where Han teaches now the older kids of the Fast family. We got Brian. We got Jack. We got Mia's second son, whoever that is. We got Nico. We got Sam Hobbs, okay? And all of them are going to be in this sort of legacy reboot of the Fast and Furious franchise that sticks to the street racing, okay? Are you hearing me? And I was telling my cousin this idea, and he goes, oh, I already know what the title is. So Tim, shout out to Tim. He said that the title's The Fast Awakens. And I want that movie so freaking bad. How incredible would it be, right? And you've got Han returning just like Han returned in The Force Awakens. Like, it's perfect. I don't know.
I guess so. That sounds pretty good. That's good.
Would you watch it?
If maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I like the idea of bringing the kids in and that, but I think the reality is that they had to go beyond street racing, and that was always the implication in the first one, by kind of infusing a criminal aspect to it. Right. But there's also this Robin Hood mentality, steal from the rich and give to the poor. Right. Dom was always giving back to his community. He was always giving back to those that had less than him. So there is a bit of that Robin Hood mentality. To say that street racing needs to go back to the core of it, I don't know. I think that's part of the origin story, right? But to say that, the next spy team, if you will, would be made up of the kids of the legacy characters. I love that idea. And I think that is probably the most feasible way for you to tap into the existing audience, the existing fan base of the Fast saga, while also striking, a new fan basis with, a fresh start kind of thing. So I think that it's very smart strategy, if you will. So, well, with that lovely idea for a spinoff, that does it for us. We hope you enjoyed this spoiler-free review for Fast 10. Again, a huge thanks to our friends at Universal Studios Canada for inviting us out to watch the movie early so we could bring you this review early. And if you did enjoy this episode, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And keep in mind, we also have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies and TV shows and games, including our recent spoiler-free reviews for Star Wars Visions Volume 2 and our spoiler-free review for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is in theaters now and kicking ass. We also have a ton of interviews on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/geekcentric, like our most recent interview with Chukwudi Iwuji and Sean Gunn from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Both Nate and I had the opportunity to sit down with them in person in Toronto here and chat with them for a little bit, and we had a great time. We also had a great time talking about the interview after, so if you want to stick around, you can watch that. Again, all of those are available on our YouTube channel. We also got some upcoming coverage for The Little Mermaid, Disney's live-action adaptation, which is hitting theaters May 26th. We are going to have our spoiler-free review out next week, but we will also have some coverage later this week from a red carpet event. So stay tuned on our socials. We'll have that on our Instagram at We Are Geekcentric, on our Twitter at GeekcentricYT, and on our TikTok, also at We Are Geekcentric. So be sure to follow us there. Follow us everywhere. Ring the bells. Subscribe. Stick around. It's the summer of movies. We are only really just kind of getting started. And you know what? We're excited. We're excited for all the stuff that summer of 2023 is going to bring. And of course, it's all about family, Nate.
Family.
It's all about family, which is why this one is in the books for a summer review. So, Nate, thank you so much for joining me for this spoiler-free review. And, as we say,
family. Just keep saying it. Family. No, love ya.
Peace.